believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Vanzis, also known as Ricky Vanzis, and a great episode for you today. Today we have returning guest and dear friend of mine, Dr. Peter McCullough. He's probably one of the most famous doctors on the face of the earth, mostly because he was one of the doctors that had the courage to really speak truth when it was the hardest to do so. We talk about that and much more during the COVID era and how kind he was to be on the Ripple Effect Podcast and on the Union of the Unwanted before and after becoming a household name and, for lack of a better term, a celebrity. And even though it seems like COVID is behind us, it really isn't. People are still having adverse reactions to the vaccine. There's tons of new information coming out daily, and we talk about all that and more. As you guys know, he is one of the leading researchers and is one of the people who are constantly up to date with all the new information in regards to COVID. So like all my shows with Dr. Peter McCullough, this one's going to be a really important one and one worth sharing and one worth listening to. And of course, before we get to this very important conversation, let me remind you, this is a value for value show. If you get some value out of these discussions I bring to you, if you're one of those people who download the show once a new Ripple Effect Podcast episode is out, if you're one of the people who subscribe to the Ripple Effect Podcast on Rockfin, Rumble, BitChute, Band.video, wherever you watch your podcasts, please consider giving some value back to the Ripple Effect Podcast to keep this show going and help expand it and help it grow. And there's plenty of different ways you could do so. It doesn't have to be financial. You can share, review, tell people about the show, post it on any social media platform you might be on, and that will help fight against the algorithms that suppress podcasts like these. But if you can financially support the show, there's plenty of ways of doing so. We have a Patreon page if you want to support us monthly, which is one of the best ways of supporting the Ripple Effect Podcast. And thank you everybody who does support me on Patreon. And as a sign of appreciation to those Patreon supporters, from time to time I do a podcast with my Patreon supporters. So if you want to participate in that podcast, that Patreon exclusive podcast, please consider donating as little as $1 a month. And you can also send a one-time donation on Venmo, PayPal. You can also send crypto if you want to send Ethereum or Bitcoin. We also have a brand new merch store. So the old merch store was down, out of commission for a little bit. I just relaunched a brand new merch store. Please check it out, the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com, or you can find all these links in the show description or on my website. And check out all the new merch, new designs, and more stuff coming very soon. But please check out the merch store, represent the Ripple Effect Podcast, show people that you like shows that provoke thought, and also you can support the Ripple Effect Podcast at the same time. And then, of course, I have some sponsors. One of the most important ones is Content Safe. Matt from Content Safe has been a lifesaver. What he does, he syncs all my video channels together. So my channel on Band.video, Rockfin, BitChute, Rumble, and many more. And all my channels are synced together. So I only have to upload to one platform, and then magically the video appears on all the platforms. So if you're a content creator, if you're a YouTuber, streamer, anything like that, podcaster, check out Content Safe. Let him know you're listening to Ripple Effect Podcast, and he'll definitely hook you up. My other sponsor is the University of Reason and the very popular autonomy courses created by Richard Grove. If you're at a crossroads in life, if you're looking to connect with a freedom-minded, liberty-minded community, please consider checking out the University of Reason. Just sign up, check it out, and you can help yourself and help the Ripple Effect Podcast at the same time. And then, of course, the last but not least sponsor is Element Electrolytes. If you want a healthy way of staying hydrated, maybe help fight back against some of those symptoms you have from dehydration, like muscle fatigue, cramping, headaches, migraines, those type of things, and you want to optimize your body and mind, check out Element Electrolytes, created by Rob Wolf. Rob Wolf is a OG in the health and nutrition community. He's written tons of best-selling books. He's done documentaries. He's been a professional athlete. He works with professional athletes. He really knows this stuff, and he created a great formula to keep you hydrated. No artificial colors, no artificial sweeteners, and only the stuff you need, and enough of it to make a difference. In one of the commercials for Element Electrolytes, Bradley Beal, a professional basketball player, talks about how his mother made him take salt before he played and he never cramped up. And I think that is not just an essential mineral, but a misused and underused element in regards to optimizing your body and mind. And a lot of athletes, a lot of people work out, or just people who are going on vacation, going somewhere hot, or people who work outside and constantly sweating. It's an underused ingredient. Please check out Element Electrolytes. Use the link in the show description or on my website. You can get free gifts with every purchase when you use the link. So please keep using that link. Get something that is healthy. Get something that adds flavor to your water. Get something that won't kick you out of ketosis or fasting if you're doing those type of diets. This is a great product that is healthy, and you can support the Ripple Effect podcast at the same time. So thanks, guys, so much for listening to these intros. Thank you so much for everyone who checks out the merch store, all the ways of supporting the show, the sponsors, etc. And I will talk to you guys in the next one. Peace. I hear you.
There you go. Can you hear me? Let me
Yeah, you sound good.
check on that. Okay. Yeah, I got a mic that kind of floats overhead. Okay, what do you got? You got all kinds of jazzy stuff in the background. I'm going to have to change my background here.
Jazzy stuff. I like that.
You just look like you're perpetually in evening time here. Let me make a change here. There's a good one. Oh, yeah, Dallas nighttime. Where do you live?
I live in Massachusetts. I live in right outside of Springfield, Massachusetts, where the Basketball Hall of Fame is. It's just a little suburb, big Polish and Portuguese community.
Yep.
I'm Portuguese, so my parents naturally migrated here, and it's a nice little town. A lot of immigrants like myself live here, and so you still have some of that culture from the whole country, little butcher shops, little bakeries, all that type of stuff. The little things that COVID was trying to kill, all the small businesses.
Right. So the immigrants came over. They're the biggest small businessmen. Every American wants to work in a big company, right? But the immigrants come over and, they want small business. And it's been a tradition. My wife's Palestinian, and all of her background, nobody wants to work in a big company. They all run small businesses. They are entrepreneurs. So.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good place to start because, honestly, that did seem like one of the things that they were trying to do during the whole COVID lockdowns and all that stuff. I mean, obviously, big businesses like Amazon and Walmart made record profits. And, obviously pharmaceutical companies made record profits. And the people who really suffered were the small businesses, people who had, third generation, restaurant owners who had to, go in debt just to stay open, had to deal with restrictions and guidelines and rules and regulations that made zero sense. And they did, in California, to see some of those videos of those California business owners that were just like doing everything they could to just try to pay the bills and stay open. And yet, just restriction after restriction. And even locally, there's small restaurants that it wasn't even worth them staying open because to be open in Massachusetts at 20%, like that meant like one table, and that means you'd have to pay a whole staff to show up, but 20% would be one or two little tables, and because you didn't, small little mom and pop restaurants. But so and another thing I wanted not to jump to, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but you bringing up your wife and being Palestinian. Obviously, we're both probably fans of Robert Kennedy Jr. We love the fact that he's running. We love a lot of his messages that he's putting out there and opening people to, big pharma and how much influence they really have and how corrupt the whole system is. But he's been getting a lot of backlash in regards to his views on Israel, and kind of his have you followed any of that? And I know he was recently on Jimmy Dore, and Jimmy Dore pushed back a little bit. And there's been a lot of people in the alternative media community that I'm involved in have said, "Hey, I love Robert Kennedy Jr., but I don't love his foreign policy in regards to how pro-Israel he is." Have you looked into any of that? And what's your opinions on him running, and really how well he's been doing with basically being one of the most suppressed people in media for a long time?
It's true. Yeah, I've been following certainly the presidential candidates. Now I'm an independent voter, meaning that, I will vote for Republicans or Democrats. And in many ways, independent voters have to be so much stronger than Democrats or Republicans, right? Because we actually have to be discerning and are unafraid to vote for a competent person or vote on important issues. So it's very challenging. You should look at the independent voters. Maybe you are one yourself, but the independent voters I find are so much stronger. Oh my Lord, it's just night and day, right? So, so all the candidates, in my view, need help right now. They need great help forming their message. And presidential candidates, number one, need to, tell America that they're going to install the team. The president doesn't do all this work themselves. They install a team. So that's the first thing, is what type of team are they going to install? How are they with human resources and managing people? I mean, these are the important things. All the presidents need to have talking points on foreign policy. I think the big issue is the Russian annexation of Ukraine. I think that's the biggest issue. And I say annexation as opposed to war. You know why I say that? Annexation?
No.
Yeah, because with a war, you have embedded reporters. They're in there showing it. You have battle lines that are drawn. You have territories that are conquered. There's big exchanges of prisoners of war. There is humanitarian crises. Millions of people are wiped out or fleeing. We don't have any of that from Ukraine. So it doesn't look like, honestly, to me, it doesn't look like there's a war. It looks like what's going on there is exactly what happened in Crimea. It's an annexation. It's just a systematic annexation. So unless we start having embedded reporters showing us there's a war, it's probably better to say that it's an annexation. Now, where the American money is going in this annexation, that's the hardest nut to crack right now. So, but I think the candidates need to look at this, and if it's a war, kind of make the case to us that it's a war. Otherwise, what are we doing in this annexation process? What did we do in Crimea, for instance? And then, other aspects of foreign policy, all the traditional areas, trade policy, Central America, et cetera. Middle Eastern policy, things have been pretty quiet over there, the Middle East, actually, over about the last 8 years or so, but that's a standard fare. And then domestic policy, we ought to hear about domestic policy. What are the major issues with the economy? We've had now multiple administrations overspending. Oh my Lord. The budget, I think, was about 4.8 trillion pre-COVID. Now it's like 6.2. It's just crazy. Both administrations, both Trump and Biden, crazy spending, just nuts, just runaway spending. So that needs to be addressed. The military, the readiness for the military, healthcare. We haven't heard anything on healthcare reform now in a very long time. Healthcare equity. And then immigration policy. We've heard a lot about, quote, the border crisis, but we haven't heard anything constructive about immigration policy. And then finally, I think pandemic response. We need an organized, systematic approach. So as I lay that out, I sound more like a presidential candidate than anybody we've heard from on TV. No one's been able to articulate that, not even RFK, in a systematic way. RFK's shortcomings, and I know him personally, he's a friend, I like him a lot, but his shortcomings is I think he's trying to litigate everything himself, every little detail. He needs to get out of the weeds, say, listen, he'll have someone like McCullough, deal with healthcare policy. I've been communicating with the nation as a practicing doctor more than anybody by a mile. And I certainly can communicate with the country. Others will need to be installed. And then, we look at Biden. Biden right now is not articulating any future for America. There's great questions regarding his mental and physical health. He's not campaigning, as far as we can tell. There is no campaign. And then we look on the Republican side. Among likely Republican voters, former President Trump has got the runaway lead at this point in time, but that's only among likely Republican voters. When the question is, what about America? The lead is slightly in favor of Biden right now. So I think that's a bit worrisome. And then there's about 15 other Republican contenders, many of whom are qualified, very qualified. The problem there is, even if they could articulate those dimensions of a presidential candidacy that I outlined, they are not getting any airtime, Ricky. I get more airtime than the entire Republican contingent. And I think both the press that's more liberal leaning and more conservative leaning, they both strongly favor Trump. They both do. So last night I turned on CNN and I was watching it last night. And I can tell you, all they could do is talk about Trump. Then I turned on Fox and all they could do is talk about Trump. The media loves to talk about Trump, positively or negative, because it sells. And so I think because Trump is such a media favorite, that's what we have now. The left wants Trump and the right wants Trump. And, he's coming up potentially on 4 indictments. And, whether they're valid, not valid, what have you, he's being constantly distracted and he is on defense. And instead of Trump being able to lay out the future of America, where does he stand, for instance, on the vaccine disaster and all these other things, what we hear is him just kind of railing against the unfair weaponization of the Department of Justice. So I'm just a doctor. I can't give political analysis, but boy, as a citizen, I'd like to see everybody get better quick.
Well, I think that blue, no matter who type of mentality is a huge issue, because I think too often people just, like you said, they vote for their team and they don't look at each individual issue. It's been kind of nice to see that people from the left and from the right, I've had discussions with people from both sides, and I've had people equally from both sides say that they like Robert Kennedy Jr. And I'm actually kind of surprised. I'm like, oh, wow, it's somebody who they don't care that he's running as a Democrat. They're listening to his ideas, and they seem to connect with his ideas. And I think there's also a sincerity to him that people enjoy. Like, he talks about his addiction. He's very open about that, his drug addiction and some of his life experiences. And I think people really appreciate that. And I mean, we've all been through a lot in regards to a whole planet in regards to the COVID lockdowns, and I think people like him and people like yourself should be national heroes, because there's a lot of people coming out now who are now saying, oh yeah, you shouldn't get boosted, you should. It's like, but when it was the hardest and toughest, I just had our mutual friend Dr. Jessica Rose on yesterday, and I was, we were talking about this. I'm like, people like her, people like yourself, I mean, you guys put everything on the line to do what was right when it was the hardest to do so. Now, a lot of people are coming out and saying, oh, yeah, like, don't do this and you shouldn't have done that. And it's like, well, you're doing it now when there's no backlash. But I remember, I had you on before you were on Rogan's show for the first time you were on.
Yeah.
I remember when I had it was a Telegram group chat, and I heard that that there's rumors that you're going to be on Rogan. And I'm like thinking to myself, oh my God, like, this is, the show's called The Ripple Effect, but this is a true ripple effect that's going to happen. And I remember when it popped up on my phone that you were, the episode was released on that Monday, and you actually joined us on the Union Done Wanted that Monday night for a live stream. And I remember telling all the guys, I'm like, listen, Dr. Peter McCullough's episode just released. I know he told me he's going to be on tonight, but he might not be because he just appeared on the biggest podcast in the world. His inbox is probably blowing up. I'm not sure he'll even see the Zoom link when I send it to him. So, and you came on anyways. And to me, and a bunch of the people who join us on that episode, we still talk about that because it was such a reflection of what your true intentions were. And your true intentions were to go out there and get this information out there. I mean, in many cases, you knew it could be career ending. Maybe you could, that's another place we can another rabbit hole we can go down is let listeners know what happened to you for being outspoken, because your license. So, I mean, so many things, shadow banning, being suppressed, who knows what else behind the scenes that I'm not even aware of that happened to you. But what was some of the things that happened to you because of you having the courage to come out and be outspoken when it was the most difficult to do so?
It's been quite a whirlwind. When I went on Joe Rogan, we negotiated, for about weeks for the date. I was busy. And I told the Spotify producers, I'm bringing the data, bringing my laptop computer, all the data. I want a clean interview. I told Rogan, I don't smoke dope. I don't drink alcohol, don't have any tattoos, just nothing. I just want a clean interview. And I knew it was important that, they generate a transcript. It's like a 3-hour deposition. And when I finished, Rogan looked like he had just been, handed something. He just literally, his jaw was dropped. He didn't know what to do. You could tell he was, starting to panic. In the next few days, panic did set in. And he contacted me multiple times. I said, listen, this is a bombshell. I told America the truth. I told the world the truth. And Rogan normally gets about 10 million views. Within a few days, we had 40 million views. And then once it got to President Biden, Jen Psaki, Neil Young, Prince Harry, we basically got about 160 million views. It kind of blew everything, blew out anybody who'd ever been on the program, Elon Musk, everybody. Still to this day, probably no one will ever touch that. And it had to do with the fact that it was all evidence-based. I cited every piece of information. I was right on point, as I am in all the interviews. So you ask, why me? And I was a public figure before all this happened. I had testified in the U.S. Congressional Oversight Panel in 2007, lectured at the European Medical Association, the FDA. I was a president of a major medical society, the New York Academy of Sciences, won tons of awards. So I was far and away the most highly ranked doctor out there giving any type of opinions on COVID by a mile. And, when I came out and told America the illness can be treated, and I published and I proved it could be treated, that was landmark. That was absolutely landmark. When I told America the vaccines weren't going to be safe in an editorial, in op-ed in The Hill in August of 2020, before they came out, I was the only public figure to make the right call. The only one. You're looking at them. Everybody else out there saying they knew all this, who put their money where their mouth was? I did. And now it turns out that my analysis, my interpretation has been correct all the way through. I've adapted my views as the virus has changed. When it broke through natural immunity, for instance, that was a big change. I went on Rogan saying, listen, natural immunity was holding out. And sure enough, like 2 days later, the CDC came out with a report that the virus had broken through natural immunity. I was on national TV that night saying, listen, update, you can get COVID more than once. And I was very fair with America. No one's actually confronted me, Ricky. No one's actually come up and said, Dr. McCullough, I disagree with you. And here's the reason why, the vaccines are so good. I've taken 7 vaccines and I'm healthy and thriving. Ricky, do you know anyone who's taken 7 shots? They've actually followed the schedule and taken 7 shots. Do you personally know anyone?
I don't believe so.
Do you know any public figure or anybody who's actually come out and told the world that they took 7 shots and they're fine?
I don't even believe Biden got his 1 shot on TV. I think that was scripted.
Well, listen, Biden is promoting the vaccine, saying to get vaccinated. Fauci did. Peter Hotez, Rochelle Lewinsky, Deborah Birx, President Trump, Mike Pence, on and on. Has any one of these people come out and said that they've taken 7 shots? I mean, come on, that's their baby, all of them.
They have not.
No. Do you remember when Tucker Carlson was interviewing one of the Republican candidates? And Tucker says, do you believe in the vaccines? And the guy leans into him. How many shots have you taken, Tucker? He goes, none. Everyone went nuts. When I went on Tucker Carlson, I was explaining to this, Tucker handed me his cell phone number. He said, I want to talk to you. He goes, I'll never take this stuff. And he's right. I didn't take it either. Probably many of your guests didn't take it. But this idea of people not being truthful. So if Biden and Trump have not taken 7 shots, why don't they just come out and tell the truth? Both of them. I mean, right now they're the front runners, right? Why don't they both come out and tell us they didn't take 7 shots, and here's the reason why. The data have changed, their views have changed. This idea of the 2 front runners not being honest with America on the biggest health issue we're facing right now is a problem.
Well, and the other thing too, what made it so dangerous that everybody was promoting the vaccine was that it was emergency authorization. So the pharmaceutical companies couldn't market the product, but everybody else did for them. And celebrities, politicians, all this stuff. And it's like, wait, I don't get it. Like, people like yourself I got kicked off YouTube and banned and shadow banned off Google. I mean, if I go on Google and look for my show, it's very difficult now because Google and YouTube are the same companies. So once you're banned off one platform, you're banned off all their platforms. And it was a huge hit in regards to my show. And it's like, for having medical misinformation, because it had people on like you, Dr. Robert Malone, Dr. Pierre Corey. So I have actual people who have a medical background on the show, and I'm getting hit with medical misinformation. I had Mickey Willis on the show that was banned off YouTube or off iTunes. So was the episode with Del Bigtree. But yet you have all these politicians and celebrities that probably have no idea about health and nutrition or medicine, telling people to go get vaccinated and spreading information that was without a doubt incorrect and obviously incorrect, like the fact that if you get vaccinated you won't give it to your grandmother and you'll protect others and all this stuff that was nonsense, and that was okay, and nobody got in trouble for doing that.
It's true. There's an effect about people not knowing much about something, and then in the setting of a crisis, professing to really be expert on things. We saw media people trying to interpret clinical trials, interpret difficult medical concepts. What's really been absent, though, is look at all the major medical centers that have chiefs of medicine. There's not a single chief of medicine coming out on national TV saying the vaccines are great, everybody should take them. No one's saying that. We had one front man, which was Anthony Fauci. He's completely disappeared from public view. His boss, Francis Collins, has resigned. We had Redfield, former CDC director. He resigned. He's now come out and said the virus came out of the Chinese lab. You have CDC director after him, Walensky. She's resigned. You have former FDA commissioner Hahn. He's the guy who blocked hydroxychloroquine and screwed up ivermectin. He joined the venture capital firm for Moderna. The FDA commissioner before him, Gottlieb, is on the board of Pfizer. You have just example after example where people who are really culpable are running for the hills. And then this censorship, you got censored. You're, one of the top podcasters. Look at Joe Rogan. He almost lost his Spotify contract after me. You have Tucker Carlson. I was the first one at Tucker Carlson to break the news. I was the guy, and Tucker Carlson was like, his comments were when I went on his show in early 2021, where he says, "You're blowing my mind. I wasn't expecting this." He was going, and he literally went nuts afterwards. I went on his show multiple times. I went on Laura Ingraham multiple times, Sean Hannity, Chris Saucedo. I've been on all the big shows. I've been on ABC, and people, they've seen their careers take completely different trajectories, person after person. Jamie Foxx wanted to meet me. We were at a Dallas Cowboys game. We talked, and he knew what I told him about the vaccines. And now Hollywood reporter AJ Benza said that he took a vaccine in order to be on a movie set, and he paid the price. And Fox himself comes out and says, he doesn't say what his diagnosis is, but it's pretty obvious. He's had a stroke. His left side of his face isn't normal. I mean, I looked right at his face. I know exactly what he should look like. He says he has tubes in him. I assume feeding tube and tracheostomy tube. I mean, this is a disaster. Jamie Foxx was buff. He's younger than me, fit. This guy didn't need a shot, and he regrets it. Look at Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber, now had 2 seasons of shows canceled. He's got a classic vaccine syndrome called Ramsay-Hunt syndrome his face. By the way, Dianne Feinstein has a part of that too. She's got Ramsay-Hunt on her face, probably after a shot, and she's got shingles meningoencephalitis. I mean, what a horrible complication. And my favorite ESPN college broadcaster, we should hear him soon, Kirk Herbstreit. Kirk gets COVID early in 2020. Then he takes the shots. Then he has blood clots and pulmonary embolism. I mean, talk about nearly dying. Or my favorite weatherman, Al Roker. Al takes multiple shots on TV, and he's telling everybody it's safe. Then he gets COVID. Then he gets pulmonary embolism, blood clots, and nearly dies in the fall. Bruce Arians was pushing the vaccine on the Tampa Bay Bucks. Bruce Arians, October, is hospitalized for myocarditis. Probably the worst is Deion Sanders. Deion pushing the shots on his teams. He's a college coach, University of Colorado. Deion develops multiple blood clots shooting down his legs. He's got a genetic tendency for that. Multiple amputations, and it's still going. 2 years later, he's still needing more amputations. I mean, what is this adding up to? A paper by Lee and colleagues, a very important paper, 750,000 people who took 2 shots in 2021 versus 1.5 million people who didn't. So it's a very big comparative study. And what they found is those who took the shots have higher risk for micro blood clots floating through the arteries and veins in the eye on retinal photography, retinal scanning. Ricky, this is a disaster. People who took these shots 2 years later are not right. And so, this can just keep going on forever, I guess. But we need to have some honesty. I mean, we just reviewed the presidential candidates. Who's being honest on the vaccines? The only one right now is RFK. The 2 front leaders won't even say how many shots they got, nor will they capitulate on risks. And you know what the case is that actually has me worried the most? Far and away has me worried the most?
Which one?
Oscar Cabrera Adames. Have you heard about this one?
No.
Oh, Ricky, this is unbelievable. Oscar Cabrera Adames, he's a player. He's from Central America. He plays in the European leagues basketball. He has a cardiac arrest on the floor. I don't know if you've seen some of these cardiac arrests, Ricky, but they just go face down. I mean, they just go unconscious. Boom, he does a major face plant, but they resuscitate him. This is in 2021. So he tweets out, he says, I've got myocarditis from the vaccines, and that's what caused my cardiac arrest. So he's out of basketball. He's getting medicines, treatment, a lot of the stuff I do in cardiology for my patients. And then in 2023, he's on a treadmill test to return to play. He's in a health center. He's on a treadmill test, and he dies on the treadmill, Ricky. He dies. And I'm a cardiologist. I've never had a patient die in the treadmill because we can always resuscitate them. We have IVs and a crash cart. That case worries me because he has documented myocarditis and cardiac arrest in 2021, and he survives, and now he's dead in 2023.
That's really scary. I'm a big sports fan myself. I watch mostly basketball and football, European football. What we call football in Portugal, and in watching the Premier League and watching soccer all over the world, there was this just very scary amount of delays in games because somebody in the fans, like in England, it happened a lot. And when they started the Premier League up again, everybody who went to a game needed to be vaccinated because they were, that was based on the lie that you were going to stop spreading it. But even during games, many games when the first two seasons of the Premier League started up again, that they would a player or a ref would point at the stands, and then they would stop play, and they said they're having a medical condition in the stands. Obviously, a lot of players stopped playing. One Sergio Aguero, who played for Man City, and then he moved to, I think, Barcelona. And then I don't even think he ended up playing a game for Barcelona, was having heart issues, and then had to retire at a very young age. It happens over and over again. And then you would constantly hear that, like, and then you would hear like DMX passed away. This celebrity passed away. This athlete passed away. And it was people, like, okay, maybe obviously people die. I mean, that's just the world we live in. But it seemed to be a lot of younger, what you would think would be healthier people with money. And what I mean by that is, like, they have resources. Like, you probably have access to good doctors and treatments and vitamins and good food. So it seemed like that to happen over and over again. And, a lot of people are like, well, how do you know it's the vaccine? But I think the question is, how many of these do we know weren't vaccinated? Like, I'm not aware of any of these cases of celebrities or athletes or any of these what seem to be like sudden deaths or sudden health issues. I don't believe any of them have been proven to be completely unvaccinated people, right? I mean, do you know of any cases where you see a sudden issue like this, health issue, and they're unvaccinated, and how many of them have they admitted are vaccinated? Because that's the other thing. Like, a lot of these people aren't coming out because of public scrutiny. They're afraid of coming out and talking about it. The football player, right, when they had that interview, and then they kind of scratch the surface of the topic, and then he kind of seemed to deflect a little bit.
It's true. That's the case of Damar Hamlin, where I was on Tucker Carlson within 24 hours of Damar Hamlin having his cardiac arrest. Bills versus Broncos. He had a cardiac arrest after a tackle, and I went on TV in 24 hours. I said, he's going to survive. He'll walk out of the hospital. People were blown away. They said, Dr. McCullough, how can you say that? He's on the ventilator. I said, I'm a cardiologist. I deal with this. And America trusts me that I make the right calls. And of course I made the right call. He walked out of the hospital. And then I told Tucker something else. I said, we need to know he took the vaccine, because it's probably vaccine myocarditis. The athletes are checked out very well ahead of time. They don't have heart issues going into the game. Tackling somebody doesn't precipitate cardiac arrest because they have pads. So there's no way it could be commotio cordis. That was ruled out. By the way, that's what Hamlin says he has now, but it's not the case.
Well, you made that a really good, that was a very good point that you were making, because a lot of people would say, oh, he got hit in the heart. But one thing that you highlighted, which made perfect sense, is your shoulder pads are connected and you have a chest pad, so it's like, it doesn't, like, once you pointed that out, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, that doesn't even make any sense.
But plus the helmets are rounded. They're too big. So it's never happened. A helmet cannot cause a cardiac arrest. It's impossible. Now, a baseball going 100 miles an hour that hits the sternum at the right time, that can, that's happened. But by the way, when the baseball hits it and that happens, the player goes down immediately. They don't stand up for a second, what have you. Hamlin actually tackled the guy, then stood up for a second, then he went down. That's actually a cardiac arrest due to the vaccine. So what's interesting about this is Hamlin's back on the field, and the question is, does he have a subcutaneous defibrillator? There's a new form of a defibrillator which does not put wires into the heart. It just sits under the pectoralis muscle, and it can shock the heart if need be. I hope he does, honestly, because if he has a repeat arrest, like Adames, if what happens to him happens in Adames, that's going to be a disaster. Now, there was another cardiac arrest, Nick Iwichuchu from USC basketball last year, and presumably took the vaccine. USC mandated the vaccine on the students and players. He had a cardiac arrest. Now he has the subcutaneous ICD, and his teammate Bronny James just had a near miss. Probably not a full cardiac arrest, so they got to figure out what to do there. I did have a chance to meet up with pilot Snow. Remember Bob Snow? He was the American Airlines pilot who had a cardiac arrest after he pulled the plane up in DFW. Remember that case?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
Yeah. Well, it turned out it's an amazing story. I wrote a Substack. If you go to Courageous Discourse Substack, you got to see the one about the miracle of Pilot Snow. What happens is they land the plane, and you know how everybody gets off and the pilot's saying goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. It was kind of at the very end of that. And he said it was just lights out. Snow said it was lights out. No warning, no dizziness, no chest pain. That's it. Just lights out. And by luck, the paramedics were at the next gate dealing with some old lady who probably had some problem there. And so they were right there. They were literally on the spot. They went over, they saw he had cardiac arrest, they shocked him right away, and they got him back. Took 3 shocks, but they got him back. So Snow's in the hospital here in Dallas, and he says, the vaccines did this to me. He takes a video, he lifts his chest up, showed everything that happened. He goes, the vaccine did this to me. And this is, I was forced to take it. I didn't want it. Now I'm screwed with this vaccine, cardiac arrest. So Snow got a subcutaneous defibrillator, ICD, and spent about 1.5 years. So I had a chance to see him. He showed it to me and what have you. And I think you could play sports with it. He said something interesting, though. I asked him, I said, has it gone off again? He said, no. So maybe these people have a shot. Maybe it's just one time, it's a stochastic thing. Maybe it won't be like Adamus. We are desperate to figure out who's going to have a cardiac arrest, who isn't. I recently reviewed a paper by Fisher and colleagues. It'll be coming out in my Substack. Probably one of the biggest studies of myocarditis I've seen. Not with COVID vaccines. It was before COVID. 587 people with myocarditis followed over time. They followed them over 15 years. And they had a composite outcome, Ricky, of cardiac arrest, all-cause mortality, heart failure, need for hospitalization, heart transplant, or a sustained ventricular arrhythmia. And the answer was, if the EKG was abnormal or the MRI was abnormal, over 15 years, there's about a 35% chance that their number is going to be dialed up. However, if both of those things are normal, that number is probably less than 10% over 15 years. So a huge prognostic difference. So, I'm encouraging everybody out there who's being evaluated for this. I evaluate people for this every day now in my practice, to know the EKG and know the MRI results. Very important. With Hamlin, he has an EKG and MRI. We should know. Same thing with Pilot Snow. Now, Pilot Snow, turns out his EKG is okay and his MRI is okay. So hopefully he won't have another event. We don't know about Nick Uichuchu, and maybe Oscar Cabrero Adames, had abnormalities that could have anticipated this. But we need risk. What we're talking about is risk stratification for cardiac arrest. Another paper to cite, as I always cite papers on the podcast. Have you ever had a guest on your show who actually cites the literature, can give you the first author and what the findings are?
If I do, none of them have do it as well and as accurate as you. I will guarantee that.
It's because I work at this, Ricky. I get up early in the morning, I read, I commit these to memory, because people need to look this up and be able to verify what I say. So a paper by Hulsher and colleagues, I'm the senior author, now on the preprint server system, has described 25 fatal cases of myocarditis, autopsy proven, autopsy without a doubt. So the point we're making is this myocarditis is fatal and certainly can be fatal. And this idea, we cannot accept any more narrative that it's mild, it's transient, it's inconsequential. I've written the American College of Cardiology, who says that people should take vaccines, that, this is pretty mild, and and they make kind of a ridiculous statement. They say, well, COVID-19 illness causes more myocarditis, so therefore we should take vaccines and get even more myocarditis. It's like, no, it's not what we should do. And so I lay out in multiple papers that COVID-19 illness very rarely caused myocarditis, no hospitalizations or deaths, though. I mean, that's very important. So if you got a little bit of cardiac involvement with the infection, this was studied, a Big Ten paper, Athletic League by Daniels and colleagues. inconsequential. U.S. military, inconsequential. Big paper by Tu Valley and colleagues from Israel showed that with COVID illness in 2020, the background rate of myocarditis really wasn't increased at all. So no, myocarditis itself, respiratory myocarditis, does not cause significant illness, cause significant myocarditis. However, the vaccines are a disaster. They are causing myocarditis at rates we've never seen. Two papers, one by Mansugian, the other one by Mueller, show that about 2.5% of people who take the shots sustain heart damage. It's 2.5%. And when you apply that to a large number of people, that's a lot of damaged hearts.
It's mind-boggling that, and you hear people talk about how we didn't force people to get the vaccine. It's like, no, you didn't force them. What you did is you made it so inconvenient and in some cases impossible to pay the bills because you couldn't go back to work unless you got vaccinated. I'm like, so yeah, you kind of didn't directly force everybody, but you indirectly forced everybody. You made it a inconvenience. You made it impossible to travel. You made it impossible to go back to school if you're a college kid. You made it impossible to go back to work for many people. Like, this is insanity that they use those terms, and not just that, they demonize everybody who even questioned the vaccine. And it just, to me, it's like there was so much public and pressure. I know people who did it just because their loved ones were pressuring them, because the people they know were, because their doctors were pressuring them. We're talking about all these adverse reactions due to the vaccine. One thing I am hearing a lot about, which is concerning because I am a lover of meat. I definitely, majority of what I eat is definitely similar to a carnivore. I call it like a ketovore diet, where it's kind of keto, it's kind of carnivore. But I'm hearing people having reactions to meat who've been vaccinated. And other, have you heard this? I've been hearing some discussions about this recently. I'm sure it's just one of many weird adverse reactions people can get. But what type of adverse reactions are you seeing the most of, and are they specific to a for different type of vaccines? Because obviously the Moderna was different than the Pfizer, and vice versa. And also, do you see anything in regards to like the dosages? Like, do the percentage of adverse reactions go up with the amount of boosters and the dosages you have?
Well, certainly a lot to unpack there. I think the dose one is easier. The original Moderna was 100 micrograms. The original Pfizer was 30 micrograms. So Moderna wrote their patent with the U.S. National Institutes of Health, and the patent is dated back to 2016. They had a material transfer agreement with the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So Moderna may be coded against the Ralph Baric designed spike protein that Ralph Baric at UNC Chapel Hill published with the Chinese in 2015 in Nature Medicine Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. So Moderna may be an older code. Moderna thinks Pfizer copied them. So Moderna's suing Pfizer. Pfizer must have more efficient code because they need just a third of the dose. So those were the original ones. And there are studies. There's one by Busby and colleagues comparing Moderna and Pfizer. And every study so far, Moderna is a bit more dangerous than Pfizer. Okay. Now, the bivalent booster is a different story. Pfizer stayed at 30 micrograms. Half of it's the original Wuhan strain, half is BA4, BA5. But Moderna at the boosters lowered their total dose to 50 from 100. Again, half original spike, half now BA4, BA5. The original Pfizer Modernas are off the market. All you can get is boosters. And that's interesting because you wouldn't start a vaccine program with the primary series being boosters. So when the boosters rolled out, we had an idea that, they're not, most people who are unvaccinated now are not starting vaccines. Now, do you know anybody, Ricky, in 2022 or 2023 who took the vaccine for the first time in those years that said, oh, I'm going to start, this is a good idea, I'll start taking them? Anybody?
Absolutely not. No.
No one?
I also don't know anybody who regrets not getting it.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, someone has said, gosh darn, I wish I would have taken a COVID vaccine. I missed out on some good stuff. Okay, so we identified a lot. No one has ever said that they took 7 shots publicly. No one. No one has said who didn't take the shots. No one has expressed regret. No one who didn't take the shots started taking them in 2022, 2023. And now we just have this disastrous. Do you know anybody who's taken the shots who's not gotten COVID?
Someone who's taken a shot who's no,
it failed universally, and every person you know took the shot.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people who were tricked by the media to get it even after having, natural immunity, which to me, that's another one of those things that it's like we threw everything that we thought was like accepted in science, like, oh, we understand natural immunity is better than immunity you'll get from a vaccine. We threw everything out the window, redefine things, and it's frustrating because it's almost like everybody is redistracted again, and they're like, let's just move on. It was like a child going through trauma and then dealing with trauma by putting it in their subconscious and saying, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to relive it. Let me deal with it by just forgetting about it. And that's kind of like the world as we know it. I feel like that's the way we're dealing with COVID. It's like there's all these things that we can talk about that get me pretty worked up. There's not too many things that work me up because much like yourself, I like to stay healthy. I like to try to stay as zen as possible. I exercise, I work out, I eat clean, try to stay as zen as possible. And if I start talking about COVID long enough, I will start to get upset because it's like it's so mind-boggling what people went through and what they put children through, and the poor kids that like that girl Maggie, right? That she was one of the ones who had that adverse reaction. They were a part of the Pfizer trial, I believe. And she had adverse, she thought she was doing good for society. She was helping the trials, and now they're trying to like scrub her from history. And this was a healthy girl who was a athlete who had no business getting this vaccine and was lied to and manipulated into doing so. And how many of those stories are, how many of those people are living with those adverse reactions, and nobody wants to talk about it? It's almost like when we go to Iraq, we demolish a country, we leave it a disaster, or we do that in Libya or Afghanistan, and after we look back and say, oops, we might have messed up, let's move on. And it's like, no, there's still people with PTSD, there's still people who lost loved ones, there's still people who don't get to just move on. And I feel like that's what the politicians and those in power are trying to do now.
It's so true. There's never a deep dive on lessons learned. Yeah, I agree. Invading countries, all these disastrous war decisions. I feel like COVID-19 response was like a war decision. There won't be any lessons learned. But what's remarkable is how you can take someone like Ernesto Ramirez. I don't know if you know his story, but he's a guy, he works down near the border, Texas, Mexico. He hears the vaccines are coming along. He goes, okay, he'll take it himself to make sure it's safe. He takes it, and he's told his kid should take a shot. So he's a single parent, 16-year-old boy, takes the shot, dies of myocarditis on the basketball court, dies. He gets an autopsy. I review it. For sure, he died of myocarditis. What does Ernesto Ramirez do? He goes wild. He goes on a tour. He's been on a tour. He created a trailer showing everything, video. He's in social media. He's dedicating his life to warning other parents and children, which is the right response, right? Now you take someone else. Take Democratic Congressman from Illinois, Sean Casten. Sean's daughter, Emily, and Casten, is pre-messaging that he's taking the vaccine, he's pro-vaccine, everyone should take the vaccine, his kids are going to get vaccinated. Presumably his daughter's vaccinated, and Emily is found in her bed dead at home. Perfectly healthy daughter's going to go to college next year. A congressman's daughter is dead. And the doctor, Casten later on says, yeah, she died of a heart arrhythmia, in bed, dead. And this is the pattern that we see with the vaccines. And Casten doesn't come out and say that he's regretful, doesn't want to warn other people, just seems like he's in a daze. He's lost his daughter. He's lost his daughter. Why wouldn't he seek out information. There's a paper by Gill and colleagues from Connecticut. 2 boys, age 16 and 17, they die on days 3 and 4 after Pfizer. They're found in their bed dead. The parents are outraged. Unlike Kasten, they're outraged. They get autopsies. It's fatal vaccine myocarditis by autopsy. So I think the reactions to me are most interesting. Why isn't Jamie Foxx alarmed, or Dianne Feinstein, or Justin Bieber, or Bruce Arians, or Herb Kirkstreet, or Al Roker, or Sean Kasten? Why aren't they alarmed? But why is Ernesto Ramirez alarmed? Have you seen the case of Sean Phillips, Canadian kid?
No, I have not.
Yeah, the father's out there. I think the handle is Answers for Sean. It's a young boy. He takes the shots, gets a rash, gets sick, goes into the ER, and then he dies. He dies, and likely died of multi-system inflammatory disorder.
Yeah, I had Jessica Sutta on, who you know, and you know, from the Pussycat Dolls, but she's one of the few high-profile people that are openly discussing what happened to her. And to me, that is stunning to me. Like, why? I mean, Robert Kennedy Jr. got involved in the vaccine debate because of mothers who made their life journey, their life purpose to get the information about vaccines out to the public, and would follow him around. And the one, I forget her name, the one that showed up at her his house, his cabin, or wherever it was, with a bunch of files and documents. It's like, hey, I'm not leaving until you read these. And you know, that's the reaction that to me is the most natural, it's what I would assume a parent would do. I mean, actually, I was just talking to Dr. Brian Hooker today, who, you know, he has a new book coming out and he wants to come on the show. And I love Dr. Brian Hooker, and I love his story. Same thing, a concerned father who, you know, basically was thrown into this whole debate because he was just searching for answers, and found out that possibly his child's, you know, it could be an adverse reaction to vaccines. And to me, that, you know, you yourself, I mean, you were very successful, and I'm sure still are, but you were successful without, you know, all the suppression and lawsuits and getting in trouble, you know? So like, you could have, you know, that's why it drives me nuts when people are like, oh, well, you know, they're making money off this, or they're selling. I'm like, what's wrong with making money off telling the truth? Like, if I, you know, say, hey, you know, I take vitamins every day, I eat healthy, and if I decide like, hey, there's a lot of crap on the market, I want to make my own products and put it out there because this is the stuff that I use, what's wrong with that? It's like, how come nobody's demonizing big pharma for selling people stuff that's harmful, you know? But yet, God forbid, somebody who is trying to make a living giving out good information and trying to help people, like, to me there's nothing wrong with that. But there is something concerning about the lack of people who you would think, like, if there's anything that would push you over the line and say, you know what, screw my reputation, screw my career, like, this has hit home, my child has been harmed, or my loved one has been harmed, I'm going to come out and speak the truth. And there's still not many people who do that. It's concerning.
The question is, what's going on in their mind? Is it they're just completely in a trance? They just can't recognize it. Oh, well, my son or daughter died. What Kasten wrote in the eulogy was, we need to cherish time you have together with your children. Like, oh, well, you know, is it just a complete trance? He looks like he's in a trance. I think that's actually the state of mind. Or is it number two? Boy, I really know the vaccines cause this, but I can't say anything because Pfizer will get me, or I'll lose the election, or HHS will. Or is it number three? Number three is, I know my child died, but I'm in on this. I'm in on this mass plan to vaccinate the world, and there's going to be casualties. And the World Economic Forum and this new globalist agenda is really where it's at. Which one of those three is it? Because this applies to the presidential candidates, It applies to everybody in walks of life. It applies to all the the media figures. Because you're right, Jessica Sutter takes the vaccine. She can't dance. She comes out, this isn't right. Eric Clapton, I know him personally. Eric came out and said, listen, I took the vaccine. I can't play. So some people come out and they're just honest. And then other people aren't. And the question is, the people who aren't, what is in their minds?
Do you think it also could be just denial? Like you don't want to believe that you convinced your child to get vaccinated. I know people personally who, they really regret. Some of my wife's family in Florida, like one of her cousins, like talked her husband into getting it. He has never felt the same since. She didn't get it until this day. She regrets convincing him to get it. And do you think that denial is a big part of it? You just don't want to believe that you could have prevented the adverse reaction, or and even worst case, a death.
Yeah, there is something diagnostic about denial. If you ever have somebody who took the shot, let's say they took the shot and they developed a problem, or their loved one took the problem, and then you come up and say, listen, let's talk about the vaccines and the data. If they say, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to talk about it, that's denial. So if you ever bring up the vaccines and people say, I don't want to talk about it, it means they're in denial. They're in some deep psychological state. They know they did something wrong to their body, and they can't bring it to the surface. They can't. I mean, these shots look like they're permanent. They produce this fatal spike protein forever. I mean, Ricky, this is not looking good. This is not looking good. We are desperate to come up with strategies to clear the messenger RNA out of the body. It looks like right now we don't have anything. Now, when it comes to the spike protein, we do have a major paper coming out on what's called base spike detox, BSD, base spike detox. And it's a combination of nattokinase, 2,000 units twice a day, bromelain, 500 milligrams once a day, and liposomal curcumin, 500 milligrams twice a day. Those three together, we've been using clinically in our practice, and we have good supportive data, even a randomized trial with curcumin. It works. So those three, again, nattokinase, 2,000 units twice a day, bromelain, 500 milligrams a day, and curcumin, 500 milligrams twice a day. Anybody listening to this is worried about their loved ones, get on it. Now, in full disclosure, I'm the chief scientific officer of the wellness company. I have modest financial ties, but the best-in-class nattokinase is the wellness company Spike Support, because it has some other very important ingredients. So wellness company, twc.health, Spike Support, that's 2 capsules twice a day, but please add to it bromelain and curcumin in the doses I've given.
Yeah, well, I did want to get, I know we're running out of time, but one thing I did want your opinion on was, when we talk about healthcare, you get a lot of the conversations about universal healthcare and like, those type of discussions. I tend to think that like the focus might be on the wrong thing. Like we're trying to figure out how do we get our drugs cheaper instead of really having a discussion about like, how do we get healthy where we don't need the drugs? And prevent having to get the drugs. And in regards to like educating people on exercise for mental and physical health, sweating. One of the, Joel Salatin, when he, last time I talked to him, he was talking about how like sweating is the strongest detoxing method that we know of, which is, it's true. That's why people who exercise and sweat and work outside with their hands, like they feel good mentally and physically. What's your opinion on or what's some advice or because you're obviously very sharp and you're full of energy. What do you do to stay mentally focused and ready and to go on a Joe Rogan and regurgitate all those studies and information? I mean, that obviously requires a lot of mental and physical energy. What's some of the Dr. McCullough's tips on staying physically and mentally the healthiest?
You're right. Mental and physical discipline go together, and that's the reason why the military trains people that way. By the way, almost all the top athletes are incredibly intelligent. Aaron Rodgers, a lot of people I've met, just the two go together. I'm full disclosure, I'm 60 years old. I don't drink any alcohol. I keep my weight down. I intermittently fast, typically try to go from about 7 p.m. at night to about 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I try to reduce or eliminate sugars, starches, and saturated fat from my diet. So my diet's high quality sources of protein in this order: fish, beans, nuts, egg whites, non-fat dairy, occasional lean meat and chicken, occasional, not every day, and fresh fruits and vegetables. About 2 days a week, I go vegetarian. I have a combination of aerobic and strength training. I used to be a really strong marathon runner. Haven't run marathons in probably about 10 years, but I mix up run and biking. I'll probably bike tonight or tomorrow. Push-ups, sit-ups, weights. I agree with you. Sweating is the best thing. In Texas, I work out in the heat intentionally, and I sweat because I need to get rid of that salt. I feel better when I sweat and then swim or take a shower. And it's vital. As you get older, it's vital to work on strength and conditioning. Try to stay free of orthopedic injuries, especially major ones. Everybody who exercises will have some minor ones. That's okay. We all need orthopedists for that. But we'll try to avoid the big ticket ones. The average person, Ricky, who gets a total knee replacement has never jogged a mile in their life, or a hip replacement. I've calculated, I've taken more steps in my life than virtually, an average person does over their entire lifetime. I ran a marathon in every state in the United States. Have you ever met anybody who did that?
That is wild. And runner's high is a real thing. I think I'm a big fan of Wim Hof and the breathing technique. I do think people have too shallow of breathing, and I think that he was just on Russell Brand recently. I've been trying to get Wim Hof on the show forever because I believe in his theory, and it's parallel with my theory that the human body is designed to recover and fix itself. If you give it the things it needs, eat things you can, and many diets disagree with one another, but most of them will agree that you should be eating things you could pick, things you can grow, and things you could kill. And those are, if it has ingredients, you probably shouldn't be eating it. Everything you eat will hurt you or help you. I fast. I eat once a day. I'll actually be having a dinner with the family after this podcast, and I go all day without eating. I'm the same way. I work outside, love the heat, feel the best when I'm sweating. That's why we go to Florida in July, and people are like, "You're crazy," and I'm like, "No." I always say, I live in New England, and when it's winter, people look for reasons not to leave the house. You'll find, you know what? Let's order takeout. Let's not go to a grocery store. Let's order takeout. When it's sunny and beautiful out, we look for reasons to leave the house. The sun it energizes us. People, from Florida or from Texas or from Portugal, where I was born, people who are out in the sun, near the water, near nature, they're happier and healthier mentally and physically and emotionally and spiritually. I think it's such a missing part to our lifestyles in America, our fast pace, always in a cubicle, always with artificial light type of lifestyles. And I think you can do a lot to help your health just by doing those little things.
It's true. Ricky, I bet for you, another big release for you is music.
Yeah, without a doubt. I am definitely not as good as your friend Eric Clapton, but regardless, I think that some type of poetic, artistic release, writing, I'm sure is a great therapy for you. Writing for myself and talking to a lot of musicians on the show and just writers. There's something about putting your thoughts, you're releasing it, right? It's in your head, and it's just wandering and pondering in your head. And then when you write it down, there's also a therapy. They talk about how if you ever think about writing a really nasty email or text message, write it all out and then just delete it. and they're like, you'll actually feel better because
Yeah.
because of the process of writing it, you feel like you've gotten it off your chest, like you can move on from it. And I think it's true. Like with music, that's another a great thing. It's like you can deal with trauma, you can deal with stresses. It's just, having some type of spiritual artistic hobby like that to me is so important.
No doubt about it. Ricky, we're going to have to leave it there. You got to get to dinner. I got to get home. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Ricky, my personal website, petermcculloughmd.com, that'll take you everywhere. I do want to announce that I've launched the McCullough Foundation, fully tax deductible 501c3. Support my efforts in court, policy advisement, building a great team. Definitely need donations. McCulloughFND.org. My podcast is America Out Loud Talk Radio, McCullough Report, top medical podcast in the world right now. Bring on terrific guests from all over. Like you, I'm very international. I like to talk to people all over the world, not just the U.S. And my book, CourageToFaceCovid.com, 5-star Amazon bestseller. It's the only book in the COVID era written by a best-selling author, John Leake. Everybody else is either a lawyer or doctor. They can't write books that really captivate you with the beginning, middle, and end. It's Courage to Face COVID-19. It's the top one out there. Probably a major motion picture, by the way. And then my Substack, Courageous Discourse Substack, is the top medical Substack right now. It's on fire. We have the late breaking news, all the graphical abstracts, and I make the graphical abstracts. So when I say the paper, you have the link to the paper, but also you have a graphical abstract as a JPEG file where you just have all the information. When someone says, well, Dr. McCullough said this, there's the information. So everyone can look at it and we can discuss it. Because until we can get to the point where we discuss data, Ricky, we're still at this impasse. So I'll have to leave it here. Thank you so much for having me on the Ripple Effect podcast. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Dr. McCullough. It's always a pleasure. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to always come on and chat with me. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I do. Keep in touch, keep up the great work, and best of luck with all your works and everything. So thanks,
Okay.
Dr. McCullough. Talk soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.